Hi, I'm your host, Marsha Florence from Just Ask. Today, our show is A Day with Emergency Medical Services and a look inside an emergency medical vehicle. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm your host, Marsha Florence for Just Ask. Today, our show is A Day with Emergency Medical Services. And ladies and gentlemen, as you noticed, we opened up with the show inside of the emergency medical vehicle. But we're going to start off with one of the paramedics of the STAR EMS, Miss Carrie Holder. Hi, Carrie.
Good morning.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Marsha. It's nice to be here.
Now, Carrie, it's unusual for us, but we decided that we need to have our public know what is a day like in an emergency medical service situation. And I want to start off with a little bit of information about yourself, how you got involved. And I know that there's 3 titles, so
Correct.
Fill us in on that.
Okay. Well, my name is Carrie Holder. I live in Waterford. I've been working for STAR EMS now for about a little over 3 years. And how I got involved in this business was back in high school. I had a big fear of being in front of crowds. And one of my girlfriends from high school had passed out, and I froze up. I didn't know what to do. And from that day forward, I decided that I needed to do something about that to get over that fear. So finally, I became proactive and took a basic life-saving class at Waterford EMS Academy, and to help get over my fear. After that, I fell in love with it. So I went on to their paramedic school, and here I am.
Now, Carrie, I understand that there's 3 different levels of a EMS worker. What are those?
Well, we have the 3 different types are basic, specialist, and paramedic. And the difference between the 3 is your basic is your simplest level. You learn first aid, basic life-saving support. The next level is your specialist, or what they call intermediate, and that you're able to start IVs. And then the next level, the paramedic, which is what I am, we are trained in intubating and being able to read a cardiac monitor and deliver certain types of cardiac drugs and life-saving drugs.
Okay. So most of the time when you first start out, if the basic person, does the basic person actually go into the vehicle, emergency medical vehicle, along with someone else to actually start to get the better practice in so they can move to the second level? Or
it's all personal preference. Each basic does ride a truck. In Oakland County, we do run basic, or paramedic vehicles. Okay. So when you get your basic license, then you go ahead and you ride in the truck, but you're always riding in addition to an advanced life support personnel. Okay.
How many people to a truck? How many personnel?
For the company that I work for, there's 2 people per truck. Okay. And so it ultimately results in 1 driving and 1 taking care of the patient. Now, if you run in a advanced life support community where the fire department actually does advanced life support, then sometimes there are 3 people in the truck because they will ride with you.
Okay. Now, there's a little bit confusion about when a person calls for a ambulance, okay, because you guys are still considered ambulance, right? Okay, when a person calls for an ambulance and they say, well, I want to go to Beaumont Hospital, the ambulance does not necessarily take them to that particular location. What is the agreement? Is the ambulance service assigned to a particular hospital or division? How does that work?
No, it's based on actual life-threatening necessity. So if we get called to a residence for somebody who has a headache or stubbed their toe, we can take them to any hospital of their choice within reason. We're not going to drive, 45 minutes to a hospital. But if it's a true life-threatening emergency, then we have to go per our protocol to the closest, most appropriate facility. So there are certain hospitals within our region that are for traumas, for pediatric, cardiac patients, stroke patients, and those are designated hospitals we have to go to. But for the most part, you do have your choice unless it's a life-threatening emergency.
Okay, so if you're taking a patient to the hospital, is the hospital then radioed, or how does the hospital know that you're coming? What is the setup for that?
Well, we contact the hospital ourselves, and we kind of give them a heads up on what to expect. Name and age, or excuse me, the age of the person, their chief complaint, why they called 911, and then the signs and symptoms that they have. And so it just kind of gives them a brief heads up on what to expect when we get there.
Okay, okay. And so like if I call for an ambulance, I'm dialing 911. So 911 does what? Dispatch the call to the ambulance services, or because a lot of people don't understand. Like if there's so many numbers you can dial, 211, 911. Which is it appropriate to dial 911 and say this is a non-medical service, or what do they do?
Well, we have two different services that we offer. We have the non-emergent and the emergent one. Our non-emergency number is over here, 866-973-9999.
Okay.
And that would be something that you needed for just a basic life support, transport. We also have wheelchair services that we offer with that. In the event of an actual life-threatening emergency, the best number to contact us is through 911. And when you do that, you're calling our emergency medical dispatcher, and they ask you a series of questions. This is one of our logs that we have for our emergency medical dispatchers, and this is their protocol that they have to follow. So when you call 911, the first thing that you're going to be asked is the address that you're calling from and to verify the phone number that you're calling from. And usually they do that just in case somehow you get disconnected. Okay. From there, there's a series of questions that they go through as far as what is your emergency. Once the caller tells them whatever the emergency is, then they go and they have certain protocols that they have to follow depending on if it's a cardiac-related emergency or a difficulty in breathing emergency.
Okay.
And from there, they would then continue to ask you questions pertaining to that particular emergency. Now, when you're on the phone with them, I know sometimes it can be very frantic because you're sitting there looking at your loved one and they're having trouble breathing or they're not breathing, and here's someone on the other line asking you to perform rescue breaths, or they want to know what type of medications they're on, or if they have special needs, and wondering what's going on. Just get here. We want you here. But the biggest thing for someone to know is that when you dial 911, the minute that you dial 911, everybody is dispatched at that point. The person who is actually on the phone getting all this information is just there to reassure you, to give you pre-arrival instructions, and to calm you down. I've already been, and my company has already been sent out en route.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, Carrie, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, with some more good information about a day with the EMS, Medical Emergency Services. We'll be right back.
Do you know that stroke targets by color? Odds are, if you're African American, you're twice as likely to suffer a stroke as white Americans. Know where you stand, because beating the odds isn't about winning, it's about living. Join the power to end stroke at strokeassociation.org.
And welcome back to the second half of the show. For those of you who are just not joining us, we have Carrie Holder, a paramedic with STAR Emergency Medical Services in Pontiac. And Carrie is here today, ladies and gentlemen, to give us some insight on what a day is like for a paramedic. So we want to insight you with some information about when you make a phone call and how the information is conveyed to the EMS personnel. Now, Carrie, we left off with some very good information, so I wanted to go over this again. The EMD protocol is actually what's inside the station with the phone service, right? Because what are they called inside the?
They're called emergency medical dispatchers.
Dispatchers, okay. So if I was to call in and say my husband's having chest pains, then this person would do what?
When you call in, then they're going to ask. They're going to flip to the card.
Okay.
It has a chest pain protocol on it,
okay.
And then they're just going to ask you the questions relating to that. So if they're having trouble breathing, if they're turning colors, what type of chest pain it is. And from there, and the answers that the patient or the caller is giving, they then have another certain set of questions that they have to ask.
Okay.
So they're just trying to find out all the information that they can in case they need to give what is called pre-arrival instructions. In case this person does have a heart attack from this chest pain and then becomes unconscious, they can then tell the caller how to give CPR, how to give rescue breaths, and so on and so forth. But the biggest thing to know, because I know a lot of times when callers call up and we keep our emergency medical dispatchers keep them on the phone, they're frantic thinking,
Right.
why is help not coming? Get me off the phone. These are ridiculous questions. But the biggest thing to know is that these pre-arrival instructions do not delay us getting to the call. As soon as 911 is activated, paramedics, firefighter, police, anyone who needs to be dispatched to this call is already
Okay.
dispatched.
Okay. So now, what the public needs to be aware of is that when they call, we know that you're upset because this person is lying there, shortness of breath and everything, but the personnel on the phone, the dispatcher, is actually trying to support the information, get the vital information to convey it to the EMS paramedic.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Correct.
Because a lot of times, like you're right, people are panicking when they're on the phone. Why are you asking me these questions? How come you just can't get here? Send somebody, send somebody. So you guys are already been notified.
We've already been notified. As
Okay.
soon as they dial 911,
Okay.
we get a call saying you need to respond to this address.
Okay.
Information coming.
Okay, okay. So the information forthcoming is what the questions were being asked from the dispatcher.
Correct.
Okay, if the person is capable of asking.
Correct.
Okay, okay. Because I'm looking at where it's asking clear as day, is the person changing colors, difficulty speaking between breaths, let's see, let me get one. Aching pains, chest pains, lower, or let's see, contracting band, okay. Crushing discomfort. So the dispatcher is asking a series of these questions, and whatever the person answers to, that is conveyed to you all in the EMS truck.
Correct.
Okay, okay, okay. So this will help because I really think that we're confused about why isn't this the vehicle coming fast enough. I called and they're not here, and then when you get there, you pretty much know outline about the person having chest pains.
Correct. We have a basic idea of what is going on. Our dispatcher does not tell us in detail all those little questions that they have asked,
Okay.
but we know a basis of what we're getting ourselves into, what we need to kind of mentally get ourselves ready for when we go to the call.
Okay. How does the insurance company play a role with the emergency medical vehicles? What do they
Well,
do?
for the most part, insurance does cover all 911 calls. Anything that is a life-threatening emergency, insurance will cover. If there's a medical necessity for us as a service to transport you to a hospital, meaning you were unconscious or you needed one of our life-saving supports, like our EKG monitor or oxygen, you needed an IV, then insurance does cover it. Unfortunately, with some of the other services that we offer, like our wheelchair transports, insurance does not cover that, but it is at a low cost as a transporting service. And then we also have our basic life support service that, depending on if it's a medical necessity, doctor offices are not included as well. But
Okay. Well, I would think, you know what, I mean, the last thing probably be on my mind is how much this is going to cost. If I'm feeling bad, we can deal with the bill after the fact. But we cannot convey that to John Q. Public because they don't see it that way. So, well, if you call an ambulance, you know, they're going to charge us. Well, you're really not charging the person right then and there out of their pocket. That's a bill that comes down
Correct.
the line later.
And depending, like I said, depending on the medical necessity for an ambulance, if the insurance company looks at it as why could you have not gone by your own private vehicle? So we have to make sure that there is a medical need for you to go by ambulance.
Okay.
And we don't bill you right at that point. You
Right,
Then
right.
we always submit everything into the insurance company, and then it's up
Okay.
to the insurance company.
Yeah,
thereafter.
I just feel like we should get over the fact that we got to pay something if we're going to be treated and get well. We could deal with that later, but right now, let's do what we have to do.
Right.
Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, when a person I know it's hectic in traffic. It's just got to be. What do you suggest, or what do you advise people when you hear the sirens and everything? I mean, because you guys got to be expert drivers. So, are you trained in driving a certain way as well?
Yes, we have
Okay.
to go through many classes to teach us how to drive with our lights and sirens on. And that, I say, would be the worst part of my job, is driving with lights and sirens, because I'm putting my safety, my partner's safety, and the public's safety at risk. The biggest thing I can tell you is if you see an ambulance approaching or you hear sirens coming down the road, pull to the right. Don't slam on your brakes. Slowly pull over to the right. One of the biggest problems that we face are in intersections when we have the red light and I have to wait for all the traffic to clear. So just be cautious when you see ambulances or somebody pulled off on the side of the road. They're not pulling over because they know you're in a hurry and you just want to get around. They're pulling over because there's some type of safety vehicle, whether it be police, fire, or EMS, that is driving to a call. So,
Okay.
and use your mirrors often.
Okay, okay. Well, that's good to know. Okay, well, I tell you what, Carrie, I think our viewing audience wants to see what it is to be in what it looks like to be in an EMS truck. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, we're going to give you insight on what to look for when you actually are in an EMS vehicle. We'll be right back.
If a natural disaster happened, we'd probably all meet around the grocery store.
We would all meet at a bus stop.
Oh, we'd probably meet at our neighbor's house.
Hi, I'm Marsha Florence. In a continuing effort to improve the Just Ask Show and provide our viewers with insight on topics that are helpful and informative and yet go beyond our regular programming, we invite you to watch our guest commentary segment. Each guest commentary will present information specifically designed to educate viewers on topics that may be important to them. Here is today's guest commentary.
Thank you, Marcia. I'm Sue Fabian, a geriatric care manager and an elder law attorney, and probably most importantly, a sole caregiver to a disabled and older adult, my mother. I also have an older brother who is the director of the National Environmental Health Association, and one of his jobs is to stay on top of emergency preparedness and in particular, pandemic preparation. Well, I got to wondering why he was so concerned about bird flu, a bird flu pandemic. And what I learned was basically two things. We all observed the government response to Hurricane Katrina a couple of years ago, and how, by the way, many of our elders and disabled were left behind, but how everybody in those first few days was on their own. Secondly, the mortality rate of bird flu amongst confirmed human cases worldwide is 61%. And you put those two factors together, and I really got to thinking about my own personal preparations. I started researching it, and the common recommendation is to have 3 months of food, water, and supplies on hand. Food, of course, would be non-perishable items like canned goods, dried fruit, powdered milk. For water, the recommendation is 2 gallons per person per day, 1 gallon for drinking, 1 gallon for cooking and washing. As for supplies, it's a broad category, from personal supplies for personal hygiene, to household supplies to keeping the house running, to energy supplies and keeping the home heated during a cold winter or cool during a hot summer. Well, what does bird flu have to do with power supplies? It's predicted that the absenteeism rate for employees across all sectors will be 40% if a pandemic hits. That means power plants and electrical suppliers, for instance. So it is very important to consider energy supplies, from common household batteries to a generator. We can all do a lot to help ourselves if a pandemic happens. If you want further information, call your local county health department or go online and visit the websites for the World Health Organization or the Centers for Disease Control. Thank you. Back to you, Marcia.
And welcome back to the last half of our show. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just now joining me, we have Carrie Holder, paramedic from Star EMS in Pontiac. And as we opened up the show earlier, you saw me standing out in front of the vehicle here, the emergency medical vehicle. So we're in here now with Carrie, going over a few things of what to expect when you enter a EMS vehicle. So Carrie, I'm glad you got us in here. This is my first time actually being into a emergency medical vehicle. Tell me, what do you do when you first start up your day?
First thing that I do in the beginning of my shift is my partner and I will come into our ambulance, our little mini hospital on wheels, and we check all of our cabinets. What we're checking for is to make sure that we're fully stocked, we have enough supplies. And then we also have to check some of our more advanced equipment. For instance, like our EKG monitor, we have to check and make sure that all that is fully functioning. Go into a couple cabinets here and we check for our jump bag. Our red bag here is what we actually take into a house when we're called on scene. And we have our drug box. Just making sure that everything in this ambulance is functional for when we get to a house and we get a call.
Okay, now I'm checking out the stretcher here, and I notice it's locked down. So a lot of people always wonder, when you get into an ambulance, will I be moved around, jumping around? So this is actually locked down onto the floor, bolted, or how is this stretched in?
Well, it is a very secure environment that you are going to be in. Our stretcher actually, it hooks on to a latch right here, which is bolted to the ground.
Okay.
So it does not move. Now, granted, we are going to be going down the road and you are going to hit some bumps, but the stretcher itself is not going to move. And with that, we strap you in and you have your typical seat belts here for added security.
Okay. So when you're administering some type of service, though, is the person fully strapped in or just half the way if you're administering some medical services up at the top?
Nope, they're fully strapped in. Unless we need to do something and one of the straps do get in the way, then we will unbuckle them to do what we need to do and then go ahead and rebuckle them. But we always keep everybody seat belted in.
Okay, so there's always one medic in the back while the other one does the driving?
Correct.
Okay, and who's providing the necessary information to and from the hospital? How do you do that?
Well, as I stated before, we communicate with the hospital. And with that, we have what is called our 800 radio here. And this only allows us to contact the hospital and the hospitals to contact us. We cannot get to any other number besides any of the hospitals. And we're able to relay our information that way. If we do need to talk to our dispatch center, then we have a separate radio which is up front here that we use.
Okay, okay. So you spoke earlier about this device here. Now, what is this? Is it EKG?
Yes, this is our electrocardiogram. And this is for heart monitoring. A couple of items that we carry here on our ambulance are one of the most sophisticated items that are out on the market. For example, our stretcher here. This is one of the most lightweight, sturdy stretchers that we have. It has a different finish on it, and that's for easily decontaminating if we happen to spill any type of body fluids on it. Okay. Our Philips cardiac monitor right here is another one of our high-tech, sophisticated equipment, and it does a couple of different functions. It's a heart monitor, so you hook up the pads and you're able to get an actual picture of what's going on with the heart. Along with that, we have a blood pressure cuff that records everything on this screen as well. And then we also have a pulse oximetry reading, which indicates how much oxygen, is in your blood flow at any given time. Okay. So this does a whole bunch of different things that we can do. It also has a 12-lead capability on it, which just is a different way of monitoring the heart in 12 different angles to see what is actually going on with the heart function.
Okay, all right.
Another item that we have is our LTV 1200 right here.
Okay.
And this is an actual portable ventilator.
All right.
And this is used for patients that have a tracheostomy or patients that need a CPAP or BiPAP. And this is actually what hospitals use in their ICU. So we have this as a portable unit that we can do as well.
Okay, so if a person is having respiratory problems and they're trying to breathe or something or other, this is actually what they're using inside. You guys are using inside the ambulance.
It depends. If they have a tracheostomy, then we would use this because they need actual forced demand air.
Okay.
Other than that, we use just our typical oxygen with a small mask or a nasal cannula.
Okay. Okay, this is pretty good. Okay, well, that helps a lot of people out there because I'm sure that a lot of times when you're in your vehicles and you're preparing for whatever emergency medical situation you're about to encounter, it's not just pads and it's not just gauze. You have to have some of these major equipments to actually get ready to see what you're going to encounter.
Correct.
Okay.
And we never know what to expect. The great thing about our emergency medical dispatching is they do try and prepare us for a certain call that we're about to go on. But unfortunately, we never do know what to expect. So whenever we go into a house, we have to make sure that we grab the right bag here that I had showed you. Okay. We grab our monitor. We have a small portable oxygen tank here on the back of our stretcher, and we wheel all this in because even though it might have come in as a hurt toe, it might end up being somebody who's actually in respiratory distress.
Okay.
So the job of our dispatch is to minimize and localize what is actually going on, but unfortunately you can never tell for sure what you're going to expect. So we have to make sure that we always come prepared into each situation.
Wow. It really is enlightening just to know that, when you see a EMS vehicle coming, go to the right, ladies and gentlemen, pull to the right, get out the way. It could be the person is already in the vehicle, or you're going to pick up a person.
Correct.
Now, there's so much room in here, in a sense, that are family members allowed to go? Somebody else is allowed to go in the vehicle also?
We can have family members. Unfortunately, we prefer them to sit up in the front just for security reasons and safety reasons. We do have seatbelts here, and these are usually used for a second patient or a third patient to seatbelt them in if they're on a backboard. Unless an actual patient is a pediatric patient or somebody who has a disability, hard of hearing, or unable to speak English, when we need them as a translator, then we'll let them sit in back. But for the most part, we'd prefer family to sit up in front for safety reasons.
Now, we have one more good pertinent question. For those who are disabled, wheelchair user or anything, is there another vehicle of such that, has the let-down ramp or anything, or how do you transport?
Yes, if it's an emergency situation, then we will be called to the scene as BLS or ALS providers, and they'll ride in on the stretcher. But if it was just a necessary transport to and from a certain facility and they are in a wheelchair, then we do have the wheelchair van service that we have that has the lift access on it that securely, just like our stretcher, securely fastens their wheelchair within the van itself.
Okay. Well, Carrie, I'm really glad you came to join us today. You gave us a wealth of information. It'll help the public feel better about riding into a EMS.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can't get any more knowledgeable than this. I mean, we try to enlighten you as much as possible. And Carrie gave out a number earlier and gave us nice pins too. So if you have a non-medical service, emergency medical service, you can dial the number 866-973-9999 and still receive some type of services. Or if you know it's emergency medical, dial 911. Well, I'm your host, Marsha Florence, for Just Ask. And if you have a show idea, or if you'd like to contact any of our current or past guests, please feel free to drop us a line or go to our website, justasktalkshow.org, or give us a call at 248-988-0250. We want to thank Star, is it Star Emergency, or how you pronounce Star what?
Star EMS.
We want to thank Star EMS as well as allowing them to have Carrie come and join us today. She gave us a wealth of information. Please feel free to contact her or myself for future information about emergency medical services. I'm your host, Marsha Florence, for Just Ask. What do I always say? If you know someone with a disability, or if you just have a general question, don't be afraid to ask. Just ask. I'm your host. Thank you.